and welcome to another Marine Mumbles YouTube episode here on the wonderful rocky shore. It is a fantastic day, it is a beautiful day, and it is also exciting because it is my birthday. Woo! My birthday. Yes, if you're watching this on the day it comes out, it is my birthday, and what luck, on the same day as a global science show, Biodiversity Bonanza. So today I'm titling this episode, this video, the Birthday Biodiversity Bonanza because when you have the opportunity to call it that, why not? In today's video, we are getting potentially more sciencey than we usually would on a rock pooling trip or rock pooling vlog, which is really exciting because we are going to be setting ourselves a challenge that will challenge our taxonomy, challenge our scientific knowledge, and just help emphasize just how amazing the rocky shore is. Today, we're going to be IDing every single species in this rock pool. Every single one. Got my ID books with me, I've got my tray. We are going to be completely searching this and IDing everything to show you just how epic it is and making our own scientific species list. I am extra excited because biodiversity is my thing. That and ecology are two words that are like my dream. If you say what your dream job is and working with it, biodiversity is up there. It's what made me fall so in love with the science that I do as my job and marine biology in general. I just love it so much. So I'm really excited for today's episode. But first, let's chat about what biodiversity is. Biodiversity is basically a measurement to show how many different types of species or types of organisms are in a certain area. Biodiversity is super important. Anyone interested in conservation, ecosystems, or just having a generally healthy planet, biodiversity is so important. There's loads of complex reasons why biodiversity is so important. So much research has been done on this to show just how important it is, and I'm going to cover that in a separate episode. So make sure to subscribe. I've actually already filmed it, so it's going to come out in the future. So, you know, subscribe and it will come up. But today I'm just going to use a really simple example before we get into the main part of the video, which is going to be a bit more exciting. So say you had a beach and all that lived on that beach were mussels and starfish. Now, if something happened to those mussels, say a disease came through and it was only one species of mussel, not two species of mussel, just one, then that disease would affect all of the species the same. It would probably wipe out the entire population of mussels. And in doing so, it would probably wipe out the starfish as well, because starfish eat mussels, and if there's no food, then that starfish aren't going to survive. But if you have two species of mussels and a disease comes through, potentially that second species of mussel could survive. It could be more resilient to that disease, and therefore there's still mussels there and the starfish will also survive. Ideally, we get to a point where we have lots of different types of organisms. So you have not just mussels, you have snails and barnacles and limpets, and you have starfish and fish and seaweeds right at the bottom, and that brings in things like hermit crabs. And I've kind of filmed a video more on food chains, which is coming up as well. And by having that, it means that say something happens to a species, then something else can fill its place. Maybe if you have 4 different types of seaweeds, or more likely it's going to be 20, 30, 40, 50 different types of seaweeds. If something happens to a particular species, another one might be able to come in and fill that role so that the whole ecosystem isn't affected by the impact of one species. The less species you get, if something happens to one species, it's going to affect the entire community, the entire ecosystem, and really throw things out of whack. So that's really why biodiversity is so important. It's integral to the survival of ecosystems, and it's an indicator of how exciting and amazing and just how productive and important and homes for species ecosystems are, and it's a great way to gauge that. So that's why today's video is going to be so cool, because I'm going to show you exactly how many species you can find in just a tiny small area on the rocky shore, and how important that is. Yeah, I think that's a statement, just how important that is. So I think we should get on with it, don't you? Cue epic montage of getting scientific things and equipment and books ready. The bag of scientific destiny. If you want to find out what's in this bag, actually all of it, then I have a video on what I take rock pooling with me, which you can check out here. What a segue. Now back to the epic montage. So basically what I've got with me is the Collins Guide to Complete Coastal Wildlife. This pretty much gets you to most things. We'll also be taking pictures and IDing everything back at home that we can't ID here, but it's a bit naff for seaweeds really. It's really quite pathetic for seaweeds, this book. But this book isn't. This has like 600 different seaweeds in, so we'll be able to nail them with this, so I bought both. And this is my nature journal, which I'm going to be using to jot down species list, but also draw the species that I don't know, or like little ID features which might help us when we're trying to ID stuff back with photos. We've got a couple of trays so that if we find anything we can get it out and have a look at the anatomical features for the taxonomy and work out what it is. So we're going to start by looking under rocks. Under rocks are one of my favourite places to find weird and wonderful sea creatures, and they might be the creatures that I need to think about for a bit longer to work out what they are. So we're going to start with them, and also lots of mobile things might be living under the rocks. So if you get the mobile species out of the way, then we're not like, well, they're not going to go anywhere, it's a rock pool, but you know, it gets them done while they're there, or while I can see them. So already living under this rock, we have the common hermit crab, the common shore crab, and the common brittle star. I'm going to add the Latin names down here because they're a bit of a nightmare to say. Now I'm going to have a nose and see what's on the bottom of this rock. Now, these are tube worms. Tube worms live in those tubes. Worms live in those tubes, which is really fantastic. But to ID them, you need to look at their mouths and their filter feedery bits, which usually destroys the species. And today we are not going to be taking any species away. We're not going to be harming any species to ID them. So we are just going to use footage that I took actually at St Andrews yesterday, not in this rock pool, but of tube worms that were out. And I'm going to ID it off that because they're probably the same. This is the breadcrumb sponge. This thing here are Bryozoans, and I don't know what this is. We're going to have to use the microscope up close to work out what they are. And I'm also just going to have a look at these because these little fluffy things that are sticking up here are hydroids. Now when it comes to Bryozoans and hydroids, they are both species that, or types of organisms that I would say very rarely, if at all, you can ever ID without a microscope. So we can get pretty close with this camera, but I'm going to give my best guesses in the description down below. But really, without taking it back to the lab, I can't be sure what each of them are. So I just thought I would be clear about that. that this is definitely a guess. This is a really cool chiton, which is really, really awesome. And here we have lots of different seaweeds. This limpet here is Patella depressa. Now you can tell, you could probably tell more if you took this off, and the bottom of its foot would probably be black. But you can see that they kind of have these black rings around it, and there's a lot of like really sharp kind of points that come off here. And yeah, compared to a normal limpet, which is, so this is a common limpet. Can you see it's not quite as ridged, and it, well, again, there's stuff around it, but it's got a very circular shape. Whereas compared to, let me find the shell of it, I just saw a shell. Compared to the shell of this is got more points on it. Sometimes barnacles can be tricky, but this is pretty easy. If you see this line that goes across, bumps up and along, then that is Semibalanus or balanoides, and no other ones really have that distinctive pattern on them. So you've got some Semibalanus barnacles. Now this is a really cool Verucca barnacle, which sounds gross, but is really awesome. And I recently saw that Elizabeth Baston, who's someone I follow on Instagram who's really awesome, she described them as a rose, which I thought was beautiful. And actually, yeah, they're delicate and they've got this pattern. And unlike barnacles, which have like two shells that kind of do this, that like spread apart to like let the feelers, what are they called? Cirri, oh my goodness. So like the cirri would come out of the middle. They have like a flap that kind of hinges more like this, so the whole plate comes up rather than splits in two. And I saw them recently more as part of my research, and I hadn't seen them before, and I thought they were really awesome. And now, because I'm for the first time realising they exist, seeing them in the wild, and that's really cool. So it's just like another species of barnacle that's here. It's like just, you know, increasing that biodiversity, and it's all about knowing what species are and what to look for as well. This is why I think this video is actually really important as well, because if you're watching this and don't know about all these species, next time you go, you can have a look at them, and maybe in 10 years time, you know, I could come back to this exact rock pool, and yes, the species would have changed. But say I time travelled back here, let me see if I do. All right, fine. If I invent time travel, I'm not really coming back here, am I? Let's be honest. But I could come back in 10 years' time, and maybe I'll have known about more species. And when I rock pool again, I'd find more stuff, because you can look and look and look, but you're bound to miss stuff that you just don't know exists and what to look for. But hopefully, you know, with hundreds of rock pooling trips, I think we're going to find a lot. We're already finding a lot, but we're going to find more. Okay, on with it. Here we have a mixture of a couple of species. The pink is a Crustose corraline algae, and there's little tiny spiral tubes which are called Spirobranchus, and these are saddle oysters. They are little flat bivalves that sit on the top of rocks, and they're really cool and all found literally within millimetres of each other. The common prawn is one of the friendliest and one of my favourite species to find rock pooling, and they're pretty common. Okay, what's at the bottom of this rock? So we have got starfish's favourite food, mussels. So I'm hoping that we'll find a starfish pop up here in no time at all. We've got more of the sponges. What else are we talking about? Lots of brittle stars. They're not. Now, if you come across this looks very similar to this, which is a sponge. If you feel this will feel almost rough, but kind of, you know, textured, spongy, and not smooth. This is what I like to call snot, because it literally feels like a bogey. It's small and slimy, and actually it's a type of colonial sea squirt called Diademine, I think. I probably won't be able to get it down to species, but that's just what that is. And if you ever feel it, it is super, super slimy. This is a common periwinkle. You get rough periwinkles that look the same, but kind of are rougher, they have ridges. This is very smooth. There's no ridges in this at all. And an easy way to tell is if you kind of run your fingernail down the shell. If you can hear a sound, then it's a rough periwinkle, and if you can't hear like a little click and it just runs down nice and smooth, then it's a common periwinkle. How's a little barnacle hat? Aww. Hello. You coming out to say hello? Yes, hello. Yes, you are a cute little snail. Yes, I will put you back to your home. Yes, you are going on YouTube. I'm not making you sign a form, no. You can just be on YouTube if you want. Can you sing? No. This is not a singing channel. Okay, fine. If you come up with a musical number immediately, I will let you sing. Oh, I am a snail, I leave a trail of slime most of the time. Another type of snail that you can find on the rocky shore is a flat periwinkle, and these are often found on fucus seaweeds because they blend in really well with the bladders on things like bladderwrack. You can tell it's a flat periwinkle because it doesn't have a point on it, and it's pretty flat. They are, once you notice them, they're pretty obvious to spot. Now this is a flat top shell, and actually, as well as the shell being really beautiful, it has a really key ID feature on it, and its Latin name actually helps ID it. It's called Gibula umbilicalis, and the umbilical part of that Latin name comes from that small dot right in the middle, right next to where the snail kind of pops his head out. So if you find that, it's a flat top shell and a really easy way to ID it, but the distinctive pattern is pretty amazing. Okay, so this is Fucus serratus. You can tell that because it has nice serrated edges, and there's no bladder circles on it like we will find in bladderwrack, which is this species. This seaweed here is actually invasive, and you can see that it's an epiphyte, which means that it's growing on another bit of seaweed, and it's what's it called? Oyster thief, that's what it's called. And it's called oyster thief, and there's a similar species that looks like this, but it will be like a solid ball, but you can feel if you squidge it that it's got air inside, and that means that it's actually invasive. So it can be a problem if it keeps growing over things, because obviously this is quite a big thing to grow on this little seaweed, and it takes up, you know, it can photosynthesize over this. So it's not great to find too many of these, but unfortunately just something that's happened. But my research is into stopping invasive species spread, so, you know, fingers crossed for the future. There's work being done. It's time to turn over the big rock. See what we'll find. Hey, we've got a starfish. This is Asterias rubens. I love that Latin name, I'm not going to forget that. They're just gorgeous, are they not? These are dogwhelks, but they're actually netted dogwhelks. Can you see that they're kind of minorly spiky, and when you feel them, they feel very prickly? So that makes sure that they're netted dogwhelks. That's an awesome another find. So this is a sea squirt. Now there's lots of little ones of these too, and these can get very confused with an invasive species of seaweed, with sea squirt, invasive sea squirt, which you might find here, and I have found before. But this individual in particular is Acidella aspersa, so it's native, and you can tell that because there's two siphons on the sea squirt. One's the mouth and one's basically the backside, and one's at the top and one's on the left side. If it was invasive, it would look very similar to this, but it would have one at the top and one on this side and not that side. And you would also see a clear gut, so when you dissect them, this gut will wiggle, so it will go from here, wiggle like this, and go out there. Whereas on a invasive one, it will go from the siphon at the other end straight round and up to that. So that is how you would tell if you were doing it properly, by dissecting. This is a type of scale worm. Now I can't identify this one, but I can tell it is a separate species from this one, which is another one which I do have a guess at the identification for. But that's so cool. And just look at how small some of these are. Some of them get up to about finger size, but some are itsy bitsy, and that's really sweet. And this is a sea squirt that has one of the coolest names. What do you think it looks like? Let me know in the comments. Are you ready for the reveal? A baked bean sea squirt. Okay, of course, we set you up for this like fantastic time lapse. I'm gonna, you know, go all around the rock pool and look like I'm really trying hard, which I am, but like, you know, emphasize that with the time lapse. And I find something. I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, I know it's a type of snail, it's a gastropod mollusk, but I can't tell if it's a nudibranch. I've never seen it before. I've never seen the pattern of it, and it doesn't act like a nudibranch because it just keeps trying to fall off the rock, which is no good when you need to ID it. So thankfully, I took a pot with me. It could be a cowrie, but like, so a cowrie is like a snail, but it has its shell on the outside. But I've never seen a cowrie kind of look like that. I'm gonna get the book. I don't even know if it will be in the book. I'm gonna take loads of pictures and videos, but that's really exciting. This is 100% something I've never, ever seen in my entire life. So let me get the book. I'll be back. Okay, let's have a quick look. Okay. It could just be in here and it would tell us, but see lemons, nudibranchs. Doesn't look like any of these. Okay. Ooh! I just found the ID for something that I wanted to find the other day. Ah, cool. What was it the other day I found? Ah, nice. Okay. Back to this. It could be maybe a type of, seems along the same shape as that. Oh my goodness. Exciting. Okay, cowries, spotted cowrie. Is that all you got for me? One species. Look at it. What are you? Okay, so I found something weird the other day, which is coming up in a new rock pooling vlog, which I did not think was alive, and now it is. And I think I've just found the ID for that. And it's like a type of group of snails that have like internalized shells, but they're halfway between, according to this book, recalling but unrelated to true sea slugs. So they're more nudibranch than they are sea slug, but they're still sea sluggy. I think potentially that's what this is. It's not this species, not the one that's in here, but it's something like that, something with an internal shell, but is also a sea snail. Just because it looks like there's something else, like it's wrapping, like I don't know if you can see on this, but like that's kind of the shape that it is. It's like wrapping around maybe an internal shell and with a snail part underneath. But we're gonna have to like look this up like online for extra stuff. That's so cool. That is so exciting. It's so pretty. It's a really distinctive pattern, but it blends in so well. I only saw it because I felt it. It feels really smooth. That's so cool. I also love that about rock pooling. I should probably make a video on it, but like the tactile nature of it, like the first thing you do as a marine biologist is gently prod anything to work out what it is. It tells you so much. Like so much of the ID is about sensory touch, and I really like that. I think it's yeah, it's just a great way to I love that touching something, immediately you can tell if it's this species or that species, or a entirely different type of species, or a different group of organisms. I think it's really cool. That's part of my job, is to rightly ID things with all of my senses. So this one I consulted the big complex ID books for, and I think I've got a good guess at what it is. I was right, it is some form of kind of half snail, half shell. There's a lot of like groups of different organisms that fit that kind of characteristic, that aren't quite nudibranchs and aren't quite sea slugs. I'm not 100% confident with this, so if anyone knows, please let me know. It seems from googling images of this that some pictures look exactly like this, but other pictures of the same species look completely different. It could well be that it is one of those species that could be a few species but haven't, you know, are so obscure that they haven't been nailed down further, or the idea could just be a bit difficult and it could be a bit off, but I can't get over how gorgeous this is. And it's a really good way to show that how behaviour influences how you ID things, because if this was a nudibranch, it wouldn't have acted like this. No way would it have dropped off. But if it's got a shell underneath that, then actually kind of curling up into that protective cocoon and cocooning itself, all, you know, defensive like that, is a way to help protect itself, and that's linked to its anatomy and how it differs. So that's really exciting, but really at this moment I'm just focused on how cute that little eye is. Oh my goodness. It also would only stick to, like, I suppose living things, so it loved sticking to my fingers and like roamed around that. And at one point it was hanging off a bit of seaweed, but it would not, for the life of me, I could not get it to stick back on a rock for me to take some decent videos, so that's why a lot of it is on my hand. Okay, so this is our little lovely whatever he is. I'm gonna have to let him go now. I really struggle to let things go when I find them that's new. I just want to spend as much time with them as possible, but I've taken enough pictures of him now, so I'm gonna put him back. But just look at him, it's just amazing. One more thing about this thing, like look, just come look how this blends in. It is an evolutionary miracle. It's absolutely bananas, and I don't use that term lightly. See if you can spot him. Go on, spot it. There, look. Oh, it's just, I don't understand. How good is that? Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Oh, this always happens in science, right? If this, you know the species, and they're all the species that you know, you can literally like hit off like 15 species in like less than 15 minutes, and then you hit one species that you're just desperate to like look at and try and ID, and it can take you like days, weeks, or even months, as I'm finding with some of the tricky species in my PhD. Like, it's amazing. Yeah, that's just the way science goes, but I have to walk away from it now and do the rest of the video. It's really difficult because I just wanted to stare at this gorgeous thing, but there could be more new stuff. That's what I've got to remember. There could be more amazing things to be found, so let's carry on. We found our first fish, which is really exciting. Now, usually I try not to pick up fish, but this worm pipefish, the way that they blend in is they look like seaweed. So I touched a bit of seaweed and it wiggled and and stuck to my hand, so I plopped him in this thing so you can see him. Look how long he is. He looks exactly like a little bit of seaweed. Now I'm going to try and get a bit of video and let him go, but he's probably going to swim straight off as soon as I put him in, so I just wanted to kind of clock and show you that we got a worm pipefish, so fish are in here too. We've got an anemone. This is a beadlet anemone. I was wondering when they were going to show up. Surprised they haven't been here already. And this is a particularly gorgeous dog whelp who's coming out of his shell, actually. Let's see if we can get a good video of that. There we are. He's beautiful. It's the most beautiful pattern I think I've seen on one in ages. Whatever, actually. Look at that. I'm gutted. I've come up short with the ID on this one. I can't nail it down to an individual species, but I think it's the type of sea squirt. This is a long-armed porcelain crab. They're really tiny and this is one of the bryozoans that is actually, I think, easier to ID as long as you can look at it close enough. I think this is Electropolosa. It's one of the most common bryozoans, and I don't know what this worm species is, but it's definitely worm, so I'm counting that. And this is a pair of amphipods. They're probably mating. They do that a lot. And this is a really awesome and bright green leafworm. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we found a worm pipefish too, so we're going to add that to the species list. I couldn't film it, it swam off. They're really jittery, and I get to record them like 10% of the time I find them, but that's in there too. Now, the tide's coming in. I have never done this before. I've never spent like an entire rock pooling session, basically from when this rock pool was exposed to when it's going to come in, rock pooling in one place. It's amazing. But now we've got to do seaweeds, so I'm going to call this the speed seaweed round. I'm not as up to date with seaweeds as I would like. I don't know. I know probably like 1% of the seaweeds that there are. That says more about the seaweeds, actually, the amount of seaweeds that you can find in the UK versus, you know, my knowledge. But obviously there's a bit about my knowledge too. So I'm just gonna speed round, use the book and try and ID and film as many seaweeds as we can as possible from this and see how we go. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, very quickly I abandoned trying to ID the seaweed on site. The tide is just coming in too quickly, which is such a shame. It's such a gorgeous day, but I think I recorded as many species of seaweed I can find, and then I'll go back and look at the footage and hopefully ID it later. If you are interested in what each individual species are, it is linked down in the description below, but I'm just going to let the music play and take in the glorious colour of this rock pool full of seaweed. Just as I suppose a discussion about the science behind this, if I was doing this in a marine biology setting for actual research, then actually looking at all the species in a rock pool is not something I've had to do. There's other ways to sample the rocky shore that if you're interested about the more scientific ways of sampling it, let me know and I could do a video about that. But if I was doing this for my research, what you would do is you would come and you would collect stuff. And that's just part and parcel, I suppose, of doing research and different things. Lots of marine biology institutes are very lucky and they are right next to beaches, so a lot of the time you would go and collect things, you would ID it in the lab, and then take it back and put it back if you could in exactly the same spot, hopefully. And there's like lab facilities that also, like, you could keep species there for a while so they're not stressed out and you bring them back like the next day or something. In other ways, you would take like small samples of seaweeds to ID and everything, and you would take that back and look at them under the microscope. There's species, things like the Bryozoans and the Hydroids, which you probably won't be able to ID without a microscope, so you have to take a small sample of them back, and obviously you can't quite return things that are attached to the rock, so you take a tiny small sample of one of the bits of them and just try and do it in the least damaging way possible. But for today's video, we haven't taken anything, we're not going to take anything. So I'm turning 26 today. There's definitely more than 26 species. I'm gonna guess that there's gonna be more than 26 species. If there's more than 26 species, then I don't know, rock pools win. Rock pools have indeed won, and I'm gonna let Mr. Hermit Crab here tell you just how many we found. The final count, the reveal is, drum roll, 55 species in a single rock pool. How cool is that? That's so exciting. Right, I'm gonna have to pack up because the sea is here.